You know, they say you should never meet your heroes. But I think the real warning should be never let a stranger into your home. Because 2 years ago, I did just that. I invited a man named Elias into my life, my business, my family, and I handed him the scalpel he would use to dissect my entire world. This is the story of how my perfect life was a carefully constructed lie, and how I used the very same tools that broke me to break him. If you've ever trusted someone and lived to regret it, you need to hear this story. Stick with me until the end, because this one gets wild. And while you're here, do us a solid. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've ever seen a betrayal this cold. My name is Leo, and for 42 years, I thought I had it all figured out. I wasn't some billionaire tycoon, but I had built something real. A custom furniture workshop, Vega and Son, that smelled perpetually of sawdust and lemon oil. A modest but beautiful brick house on a quiet cul-de-sac where the biggest drama was whose sprinkler system was overwatering the petunias. And my family. God, my family. Clara, my wife of 18 years. She had a laugh that could untie a knot in your shoulders from across the room. She'd leave little post-it notes on the milk carton. Don't forget to be awesome today. And she still held my hand when we drove to the grocery store. We had our routines. Thursday night was pasta and a bad reality TV show we'd mock relentlessly. Sunday mornings were for coffee on the porch, listening to the world wake up. And Ben, our son, 15 years old, all elbows and awkwardness, and a heart so big it sometimes scared me. He was a gifted guitarist, his fingers finding chords I couldn't even comprehend. The workshop was supposed to be Vega and Son for him one day. He'd come in after school, the bell on the door jingling, and he'd slump onto the stool in the corner, dumping his backpack on the floor. He'd tell me about his day, about some girl he was too nervous to talk to, about a riff he was trying to master. I'd nod, sanding a tabletop, and feel a peace so profound it was almost religious. This was my universe. Solid, stable, real. It all started to fracture on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was applying a coat of tung oil to a walnut desk, the radio humming some classic rock tune, when the bell jingled. I looked up, expecting Ben. It wasn't Ben. The man standing in the doorway was drowned by a too large coat, water dripping from his dark hair onto the clean floor. He looked hollowed out, like he had been running for a long time and had just now forgotten why. "Leo Vega?" he asked, his voice raspy. "That's me. Can I help you?" He stepped further in, and I saw the intensity in his eyes. A fierce, intelligent light burning in a face of exhaustion. I need a job." I chuckled, gesturing around the workshop. "I appreciate you coming in, man, but it's pretty much a one-man operation. My son helps out after school. I'm not really looking for it." "I'm a master woodworker," he interrupted, not arrogantly, but with a simple, stark factuality. "French polish, marquetry, hand-cut dovetails. I've restored 17th century armoires and built conference tables for Fortune 500 CEOs. My references are impeccable." He reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out a folded but perfectly dry sheaf of papers, his portfolio. I wiped my hands on a rag, intrigued despite myself. I took the papers. The first photo was of a Baroque-style chest of drawers so exquisite it made my heart ache. The craftsmanship was flawless, ethereal. It was art. I looked from the photo to the bedraggled man in front of me. The disconnect was staggering. "This is incredible work, Mr. Thorne. Why are you here?" In my little shop, you should be in Paris or Milan. A shadow passed over his face. Life doesn't always go according to plan. I had a partnership. It ended badly. I lost my share of the business, my home, everything. I just need a place to work, to use my hands. I'll take any wage. I need to start over. There was a raw honesty in his voice that bypassed my usual caution. He was an artist, down on his luck. I'd been there. I remember sleeping in the back of this very workshop when I was first starting out, eating canned beans heated on a hot plate. Clara's voice echoed in my head. You have a savior complex, Leo. You see a wounded bird, and you have to bring it home. Maybe she was right. All right, I heard myself say. Trial basis, 2 weeks. You can start on that stack of oak over there. I need 50 chair spindles turned and sanded to 220 grit. Let's see what you've got. Elias didn't smile. He just gave a single sharp nod. You won't regret this. But of course I would. I just didn't know it yet. Elias was a ghost in the machine of my shop. He was quiet, relentless, and preternaturally skilled. His spindles were perfect, identical down to the micron. He could bring out a grain in a piece of wood I would have dismissed as plain. Within a month, he wasn't just an employee, he was a partner in creation. Our work soared. We started getting commissions I could only have dreamed of. A law firm wanted a boardroom table. A tech billionaire wanted a live-edge slab desk with integrated lighting. Elias designed it. I built it with him. He started coming over for dinner. Clara was initially wary, this intense, silent man sitting at our table, barely speaking. But he slowly won her over. He'd compliment her cooking with a startling specificity. The tarragon in this sauce is brilliant, Clara. It cuts through the richness of the cream perfectly. He'd notice things. He saw she was struggling to open a stubborn jar of olives one night, and without a word, took it from her, opened it with a faint twist of his wrist, and handed it back. A simple, stupid thing, but I saw her blush. He bonded with Ben over music. Elias, it turned out, was a classically trained cellist. He'd listen to Ben play his electric guitar, wailing out some punk rock anthem, and he wouldn't criticize. He'd just nod and say, "Your timing is excellent, Nevin. Now, let's talk about the emotional resonance of the bridge section." He spoke to Ben like an adult, like an artist, and Ben blossomed under the attention. He started spending more time in the workshop with Elias than with me. And I was happy. Business was booming, my wife was happy, my son had found a mentor. My savior complex felt vindicated. I'd saved this man, and he was enriching all our lives in return. The first crack was so small I almost missed it. It was a Thursday, pasta night. I was recounting a funny story about a difficult client. Clara was laughing, Ben was shoveling food into his face, phone on his lap under the table. Elias was, as usual, quiet. So I told him if he wants purple heartwood, he has to accept that it's going to turn brown on her time. It's not a defect, it's science. Clara laughed again, reaching for her wine glass. Oh, Leo, you and your science. Elias spoke, his voice low and even. Leo's right, of course. The photochemical degradation of the extractives in peltogyne is well documented. The client's ignorance isn't your burden to carry. The table went quiet. Ben looked up, impressed. Clara looked at Elias, her head slightly tilted. Peltogyne? She asked. The genus for purple heartwood, Elias said, taking a sip of water. Its beauty is in its impermanence, a lesson most people are unwilling to learn.
He held her gaze for a second too long, and she didn't look away. It was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. But a cold little knot tightened in my stomach. It was the way he'd said it. So knowing, so intimate. As if he and Clara were in on a secret that I, the simple craftsman, couldn't possibly understand. I shook it off. I was being paranoid, insecure. But the feeling didn't leave. It just burrowed deeper, a seed of doubt planted in fertile soil. A few weeks later, I was looking for a specific router bit in Elias's organized by a psychopath toolbox. My hand brushed against a phone I didn't recognize, tucked under a roll of leather. It was an old, cheap burner phone. Who had a burner phone? As I moved the leather, the screen lit up. A notification. A single word from a contact saved as C. C. Tonight? My heart hammered against my ribs. The roar of the extraction fan sounded like a scream. I carefully put everything back exactly as it was. That night, I watched Clara. She was humming, loading the dishwasher. Normal. Happy. Was she happier? Was she dressing nicer for work? Was she distant? Every little thing became evidence. The new perfume, the extra few minutes she spent on her makeup, the way she'd sometimes just stare out the kitchen window, a faint smile on her lips.
I was going crazy. I had to know. The next day, I told Elias I had to run to the lumber yard for a special order. I'd be gone for a few hours. I drove around the block and parked my van behind the giant dumpster of the strip mall 2 streets over. I pulled out my iPad and opened the home security app. I'd installed cameras at the workshop years ago after an attempted break-in. One pointed at the front door, one in the main workshop area, one in the finishing room. My hands were sweating. I felt like a monster, spying on my friend, my employee. But that word, tonight, it echoed in my skull. For an hour, nothing. Elias sanding a cabinet door. Ben came in after school, dumped his bag, talked to Elias for a bit, then left for his guitar lesson. Normal. Then, at 4:17 p.m., the front door camera alerted me. Clara's car pulled into the lot. She never came to the workshop this time of day. She got out carrying what looked like a Tupperware container. Leftovers? She walked in. On the workshop camera, I saw Elias look up. He didn't look surprised. He smiled. It wasn't his usual faint smile. It was a real, full, warm smile. Something I rarely saw. Clara said something, holding out the container. He walked over to her, but he didn't take the food. He stopped very close to her. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. And she didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She leaned into his touch. The world stopped. The sound in my ears was a deafening, white noise roar. I couldn't breathe. I was watching my life explode on a 6-inch screen.
He said something. She laughed, that untie-the-knot laugh that was meant for me, and nodded. Then they turned and walked together, out of the frame of the workshop camera and toward the finishing room. The finishing room had no camera. It was a private space for applying stains and varnishes without dust. It had a door, a lock. I sat in my van behind a dumpster, and I watched the timestamp on the empty workshop camera tick by. 1 minute. 5. 10. They were in there for 22 minutes. When they emerged, Clara's hair was slightly messy. She was smoothing down her blouse. Elias held the door open for her, his hand resting on the small of her back for a moment too long. She left without looking back. He stood in the middle of the workshop, watching her go, a look of pure, unadulterated triumph on his face. I threw up onto the passenger seat floor mat. And I thought that was the worst pain I could ever feel. But Elias was just getting started. His real plan was so much more vicious than just stealing my wife. The drive home was a blur of rage and tears. I walked into the house, a bomb ready to detonate. The smell of her cooking, a garlic and rosemary roasted chicken, made me want to flip the table. She turned from the stove, that beautiful, treacherous face, smiling at me. "Hey, you! How was the lumber yard? Get what you needed?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her until the truth fell out. But I looked past her, into the living room. Ben was on the couch, guitar in his lap, homework forgotten. He was watching us. I couldn't detonate our family in front of him. Not yet. I had to be sure. I had to know the full extent of the betrayal. "Yeah," I mumbled, my voice thick. "Got it. I'm not feeling great. I'm gonna skip dinner."
Her smile faded into concern. "Oh, honey, everything okay?" The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "Just a headache. I'm going to lie down." I locked myself in our bedroom, my bedroom, and spent the night staring at the ceiling. The image of Elias's triumphant face burned onto the back of my eyelids. This wasn't an affair of passion. It was a conquest. He hadn't just taken a piece of my life. He was systematically dismantling it and using my own trust as the wrecking ball. The next morning, I was a ghost. I went through the motions. I avoided Elias's eyes at the workshop. Every tool in my hand felt like a potential weapon. I thought about confronting him, beating him to a pulp right there on the shop floor. But that would be too easy for him. He'd play the victim. Clara would choose him. I'd lose Ben. I'd lose everything. I had to be smarter than him. I had to play the long game. The opportunity to understand his endgame came a week later. Elias announced he'd landed us the biggest commission of our lives. A hotel chain wanted bespoke furniture for their new flagship luxury resort. Desks, beds, tables, chairs, hundreds of pieces. It was $1 million contract. "This is it, Leo," he said, his eyes gleaming. "This is what we've been building towards. But to fulfill an order this size, we need to incorporate, become a proper company. Attract investors. We need to show them we're a serious, scalable operation." It made sense. It was everything I'd ever wanted. But it was coming from him. Incorporate? How does that work? "We form a new company, Vega and Thorn LLC. We transfer all the assets of Vega and Son into it. The equipment, the client list, the brand. We'll own it 50-50. It's the only way the big players will take us seriously. It legitimizes us." 50-50. He'd walk in, a year ago a homeless man on my doorstep, and walk away owning half of everything my father and I had built over 30 years. Half of my life's work. And I knew with a cold, sick certainty that he didn't plan on it being 50-50 for long. I pretended to be overjoyed. "Elias, that's incredible. Let's do it. Let's draw up the papers." His smile was thin, sharp. "I've already taken the liberty of having my lawyer draft them. He's sending them over for your review." His lawyer, of course. The packet arrived. It was 50 pages of dense legalese. I took it to a lawyer of my own, a sharp older woman named Patricia, who had handled my dad's will. I slid the packet across her desk. I need you to tell me what this really says, not what it seems to say, what it really says. She spent 2 days with it. When I went back, her face was grim. Leo, who is this man? My business partner. Why? This isn't a partnership agreement. It's a suicide note for you. She pointed to a clause buried on page 37. This here, it's a buy-sell agreement. It states that if one partner becomes incapacitated, dies, or files for personal bankruptcy, the other partner has the right to buy out their share of the company at a predetermined valuation. That sounds fairly standard, I said weakly. The predetermined valuation is right here. She pointed to another addendum. It values the entire company, including all future profits from this hotel contract, at $250,000. I stared at her. That's insane. The hotel contract alone is worth $1 million. The equipment, the brand. I know, she said softly. Now look at this clause here. It gives Mr. Thorne sole signing authority on all business loans and lines of credit. And this one here states that any personal debt you incur can be called against your shares in the company if a creditor seeks restitution. The pieces were crashing together in a horrifying mosaic. So if I were to, say, suddenly have a massive personal debt, he could trigger this clause, she confirmed. Your creditor could force you to sell your shares to cover the debt, and Mr. Thorne, as the other partner, has the right of first refusal. He could buy your entire half of the company, a company worth well over $1 million, for $125,000. Pennies on the dollar. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a perfect legal trap. He wasn't just after my wife, he was after my business, my legacy. He was going to use my own signature to make me a pauper and leave me with nothing. There's more, Patricia said, her voice filled with reluctant pity. The incapacitation clause. It's very broadly defined. It includes mental or emotional instability that impacts professional judgment. A diagnosis of depression, anxiety, even grief could be used against you. I understood now. The affair with Clara wasn't just for kicks. It was a strategic move. It was the emotional wrecking ball designed to make me unstable, to make me seem unfit. He was going to break my heart, then use my broken heart as legal justification to steal my life's work. I thanked Patricia, paid her fee, and walked out into the bright sunlight. The world looked different, sharper, more dangerous. I had the blueprint of my own destruction in my hands, and I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stop it, not directly. If I refused to sign, he'd know I was onto him. The plan would just change. He'd find another way. I had to let the trap close. I had to sign my life away. But I was going to make sure that when he sprung it, he was the one inside. Signing that paper was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the first move in a game he didn't know we were playing. The following months were a special kind of hell. I signed the incorporation papers with a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. I became the perfect, grateful partner. Elias handled the business side, loans, the contracts, the investor meetings. I focused on the work, building the beautiful furniture for the hotel, each piece feeling like a coffin nail for my own future. At home, I played the part of the oblivious, stressed-out husband. Clara grew more distant, more secretive with her phone. She took more yoga classes that ran late.
I'd come home to find Ben eating a frozen pizza alone. Elias's number on his speed dial because Elias said I could call him if I had any questions about my chord progressions. The betrayal was a constant physical pain. But I nursed it. I fed it. I let it harden into a cold diamond core of purpose. I started my own counter-preparations, quietly, slowly. I began skimming cash from the few small private jobs I still handled myself, jobs Elias deemed beneath our new corporate status. It wasn't much, a few hundred here and there, but I hid it away in a lockbox, buried in a corner of the workshop. My escape fund.
I started documenting everything. I bought a tiny voice-activated recorder. I'd leave it running in my pocket during conversations with Elias, capturing his veiled insults, his subtle manipulations. I photographed documents on his desk when he was out. I compiled a secret diary of times, dates, inconsistencies in his stories. But I knew it wasn't enough. Evidence of him being a jerk wouldn't undo a rock-solid legal contract. I needed a bigger weapon. I needed to understand him. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Mark who asked no questions and took cash. I gave him Elias's name, his date of birth from the employment forms he'd filled out, and a photo. Find out everything, I said. There's a bonus in it if you find the skeletons. It took Mark 3 weeks. He met me in a dank diner outside of town, sliding a thin file across the sticky table. Your guy's good, real good. He's covered his tracks. My heart sunk. But, Mark continued, nobody's perfect. The name Elias Thorne is clean, spotless, too spotless. It's like he was born at the age of 30. So I dug deeper. The Social Security number he gave you, it's valid, but it's only been active for the last 12 years. What does that mean? It means it's probably not his original one. People change their SSN for a few reasons: identity theft, witness protection, or because they're running from a past so bad they need to completely reinvent themselves. Which one is he? I asked, my mouth dry. I leaned on an old contact at the IRS. The name attached to that SSN before his? Evan Sterling. The name meant nothing to me. Mark saw my confusion. Evan Sterling was a wonderkind financier in Boston, a real golden boy. His family was old money. About 12 years ago, his family's investment firm, which he was being groomed to take over, collapsed, wiped out hundreds of retirees, pensions, the whole 9 yards, millions of dollars gone. What happened? Evan testified that his father, the patriarch, had been running a Ponzi scheme for decades, that he'd discovered it and tried to blow the whistle. The father was convicted. He died in prison a year later. The family name was Mud. The son, Evan, walked away. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the court of public opinion, well, they crucified him. They said he'd thrown his own father under the bus to save himself, that he was the real mastermind. He vanished, changed his name, became Elias Thorne. I sat back, stunned. Elias, Evan, wasn't just a skilled manipulator. He was a product of manipulation. He'd learned from the best. He'd seen an empire built on a lie, and he'd seen it collapse. He'd learned that loyalty was a weakness, and that family was a liability. His entire life was a testament to the notion that you either eat or get eaten. He wasn't just stealing from me because he could. He was doing it because it was the only thing he knew. It was his nature. He saw my happy family, my honest business, my simple trust, and he had to destroy it, to prove that it was all as hollow as his father's Ponzi scheme, to prove that everyone, deep down, was as corruptible as he was. He wasn't just my enemy. He was the embodiment of a cynical, vicious worldview that had to be proven wrong. And I knew, then, how to break him. I couldn't beat him with lawyers or money. He was better at that game. I had to beat him with the one thing he truly despised, the one thing he believed was a fairy tale.
I had to use the truth. The final phase of his plan went into motion with a terrifying efficiency. One afternoon, Elias came to me, his face a mask of concern. "Leo, we have a problem. A big one." "What is it?" "The loan for the final shipment of Brazilian rosewood. The bank is calling it. They want a full repayment. Now." "What? Why? We're good for it. The hotel payment is due next month." I know, but there's a clause. They can call it if they perceive a risk to the company's stability. And, well, I hate to say this, but your name has come up. My name. He looked pained. "There are rumors, Leo, about your state of mind. I've defended you, of course, but people have seen you. You look exhausted, stressed. You've been withdrawn. The bank got spooked. They think you're heading for a breakdown, and you'll sink the company." It was brilliant. He'd primed the pump. He'd probably started the rumors himself. He'd created the instability he needed to trigger the loan clause. "How much?" I asked, my voice hollow. $250,000. The exact amount of the predetermined valuation for my half of the company. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a surgical strike.
"I don't have that kind of money," I whispered, playing my part perfectly. "I know," he said, placing a sympathetic hand on my shoulder. I fought the urge to recoil. "Look, I can cover it. I'll loan you the money, personally. You can sign a promissory note to me. That will satisfy the bank, we'll complete the hotel project, get paid, and you can pay me back. It's just a formality." The final piece of the trap. I would be personally, legally indebted to him. And when the time came, he would call the debt, seize my shares, and own everything. "You'd do that for me?" I said, laying the gratitude on thick. "We're partners, Leo," he said, his eyes full of lies. "That's what partners do." I signed the promissory note. I signed my life away. Again. I went home that night and found Clara packing a suitcase. "What's going on?" I asked, though I knew. She couldn't even look at me. "Leo, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving." "With him?" The words tasted like ash. She finally met my eyes, hers filled with tears, not of sadness, but of guilt and a frantic need to be free. "I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen, but what Elias and I have, it's real. He sees me. He understands me, in a way—" I held up a hand. I couldn't bear to hear it. "Just go." She left. The door clicked shut. The silence in the house was absolute. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the photos of our life, and I felt nothing. The pain was gone. It had been burned away, leaving only a cold, clear certainty. Ben found me there an hour later, He'd been at a friend's house. "Where's Mom?" he asked, seeing the empty house, the missing suitcase. "She's gone, Ben." "Gone where?" "She's left us for Elias." His face, my son's beautiful, trusting face, crumpled. The betrayal he felt wasn't just about a mother leaving, it was about a hero falling. Elias had been his idol. No, that's a lie. She wouldn't. "It's the truth," I said, my voice steady. "And it gets worse." I laid it all out for him. The legal trap, the debt, the plan to take the business. I showed him the documents my lawyer had explained. I didn't sugarcoat it. I treated him like the young man he was becoming. His shock and grief turned into rage I had never seen in him. "I'll kill him. I swear to God, I'll—" "No," I said, gripping his shoulders. "Violence is what he expects. It's what he wants. It would prove my instability. We're going to do this my way. We're going to beat him at his own game. But I need your help. Can you trust me?" He looked at me, his eyes swimming with tears, and he saw the cold fire in mine. He nodded once. "What do we do?"
The grand unveiling of the hotel's flagship lobby, featuring all our custom work, was a black-tie event. Investors, press, local bigwigs. Elias was in his element, wearing a $5,000 suit, a glass of champagne in his hand, holding court. Clara was on his arm, wearing a stunning black dress I'd never seen before. She looked happy, she looked wealthy, she looked like a stranger. Ben and I arrived late. We were dressed in our best, but we looked like what we were, craftsmen, not capitalists. Elias saw us and excused himself from a group, coming over with a wide, predatory smile. "Elias, Ben, so glad you could make it. Quite a night, isn't it? The culmination of all our hard work." His eyes flicked over me, looking for signs of the broken, destitute man he expected to see. "It sure is, Elias," I said, my voice calm. "A real dream come true." A man in a hotel manager's jacket tapped Elias on the shoulder. "Mr. Thorne, the regional director would like to say a few words and present you with the final payment check. We'd like you to join him on the podium." "Of course," Elias beamed. He took the stage to a round of applause. The director praised the vision, the craftsmanship, the beauty of the pieces that filled the luxurious space. He held up a giant ceremonial check made out to Vega and Thorne, LLC, for the final payment. "And so, it is my great honor to present this to the man whose vision made it all possible, Mr. Elias Thorne." Elias stepped forward, ready to accept the check. The applause swelled. That's when I stepped out of the crowd and walked toward the podium. A murmur went through the crowd. Elias's smile tightened. What was I doing, ruining his moment? "Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Elias. You're right. This is a culmination."
I turned to face the crowd. My heart was hammering, but my hand was steady. "My name is Leo Vega. My father started this business 40 years ago in a one-car garage. He taught me that your name is your bond, that your work is your legacy, that truth and beauty are the same thing." I could see Elias getting nervous. He had no idea where this was going. "Elias here joined me a couple of years ago, a brilliant craftsman, down on his luck. I welcomed him in. I gave him a partnership. I trusted him. And he taught me some lessons too." I paused, letting the silence hang. "He taught me that some people see trust as a weakness,
He taught me that some people see a family not as something to love, but as something to use. He taught me that a contract isn't a promise, it's a weapon. The room was dead silent now. The hotel director looked confused. Clara's face was pale. Elias Thorne. Or should I say, Evan Sterling. The blood drained from his face. He actually took a step backward. He hadn't heard that name in over a decade. Evan Sterling, son of Robert Sterling, who ran Sterling Investments into the ground, destroying the lives of countless people. Evan, who testified against his own father to save his own skin, who vanished and reinvented himself as Elias Thorne, master woodworker. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw reporters perking up, phones coming out to record. "This is slander!" Elias hissed into his microphone, his voice trembling with rage. "You're unhinged! This is exactly the mental instability I warned everyone about!"
"Is it?" I said calmly. "Because I have the court documents from Boston. I have the name change records. I have it all right here." I held up a USB drive. But that's not why we're here tonight. We're here to talk about his latest venture, his latest Ponzi scheme. I turned back to the crowd. The beautiful furniture in this room, the product of Vega and Thorne, it was built with a loan from First Mercantile Bank, a loan that was mysteriously called in early, forcing me to take a personal loan from Mr. Thorne himself to cover it. A loan that would have allowed him to seize my half of the company for pennies on the dollar when he called that debt, which he was planning to do tomorrow. I could see the investors in the crowd shifting uncomfortably. This was their world. They understood financial treachery. "But here's the thing he didn't know," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I couldn't repay the bank loan because he lied about it being called. The bank has no record of a call notice. He forged the document to create the crisis, and the money he loaned me to cover it, it wasn't his. It was company money. He embezzled $250,000 from Vega and Thorne LLC and loaned it back to me so I would be indebted to him with his own company's cash." The hotel director lowered the giant check. Elias was shaking his head, sputtering, but no words were coming out. The flawless facade was shattered. "And the promissory note I signed? The one that gives him the right to my shares? It's null and void, because you can't legally indebt someone through fraud and embezzlement. My lawyer is filing the papers as we speak." I looked directly at Clara, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. He used people. He used my wife. He used my son. He used me. Not for love, not for passion, but as pieces on a chessboard to see if he could get away with it. To prove that everyone else is as hollow and corrupt as he is. I finally turned to Elias. His face was a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. The charming, sophisticated mask was gone, revealing the vicious, cornered animal beneath. "But you know what, Elias?" I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper that the microphone picked up perfectly. "You failed. My family is broken, but it's not destroyed. My business is wounded, but it's still mine. You took everything you could, but you couldn't take the one thing that actually matters. You couldn't take our truth." I nodded to Ben, who had been standing at the back.
He hit a button on a remote. On the large screen behind the podium, meant for hotel promotions, a video began to play. It was security footage from my workshop camera. The day Clara came in. We saw her offer the Tupperware. We saw Elias brush her hair aside. We saw her lean into his touch. We saw them walk toward the finishing room. Then, the video cut to the timestamp, counting the 22 minutes they were in there. The room erupted in a chorus of shocked murmurs. Clara fled, pushing through the crowd in tears. Elias just stood there, exposed. His financial fraud was one thing, but this public, humiliating reveal of his cruel manipulation was the final, killing blow. His reputation, his carefully constructed new identity, was annihilated in front of the very people whose respect he craved. He wasn't a brilliant businessman. He was a common, sordid cheat. The hotel director handed the giant check to me. "I believe this belongs to the original Vega and Son," he said quietly. I took it. I looked at Elias one last time. "The game's over, Evan. You lose." I walked off the stage, through the silent, staring crowd, with my son at my side. We didn't look back.
They arrested Elias, Evan, a week later for fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. He'll be away for a long time. Clara tried to come back, full of apologies and excuses, saying Elias had manipulated her too, but some betrayals cut too deep. The divorce was quick. She moved to another state. We don't speak. Ben and I rebuilt the workshop. It's just Vega and Son again. The silence is different now. It's not always peaceful, but it's honest. We talk about what happened. We're healing. It turns out that a foundation built on truth, even if it gets shaken, doesn't completely collapse. I learned that revenge isn't about violence or hatred. It's about restoration. It's about taking the narrative back from the person who tried to steal it and writing your own ending. Elias believed that everyone had a price, that every soul could be corrupted. My revenge was proving him wrong. My revenge was walking away with my integrity and my son still intact. The world can be a dark place. There are people like Elias out there who see light and feel the need to extinguish it. But their power dies in the face of the truth. No matter how clever they are, no matter how perfect their plan seems, the truth is always waiting. You just have to be brave enough to dig it up and strong enough to hold it up for the whole world to see. So what do you think? Was there any other way that could have gone down? Could Elias have been stopped sooner? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you ever feel like someone is pulling the wool over your eyes, trust your gut. It's usually right. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.